Hello, this is Pixel Freak, and we are doing part 41 of the Final Fantasy Dimensions walkthrough. So I think I may actually comment on this whole piece, just because it's been a while since I did a whole commentary. So we're going to go into the Cave of Fabrica. In the last piece, we picked up the new summon of Phoenix for this particular team. This is actually the dungeon that's going to end this section of the game. We're going to go back to Nox's team after this. So if I remember correctly, there are some status elements in this particular dungeon that are reoccurring. Here, it's looking like some poison. That's not poison though, is it? No, that's not poison. That's the weakened version or whatever it's called. That one actually drains your HP, but doesn't leave you with an affliction afterwards. So this is actually 2 parts of one dungeon. There's about 20 minutes here in this part, and then I finished the dungeon up in the next part, part 42. The reason I've done that is because this is a pretty long dungeon. Altogether, it's a little over 40 minutes, and that's with a lot of the fights cut out. So it's going to take quite some time, and it makes sense to do it as 2 different videos. So kind of an interesting fact here, the doctor that is in charge of creating this robo here that I've called Droid, he's called Dr. Luge, or Dr. Lugi. I think it's pronounced Luge, but he is actually a character from Final Fantasy IV, which is 2 in the US. Always got to correct that too. He was in that game, he created a Frankenstein droid, and you found him in the Tower of... I don't think it was called the Tower of Babel. Maybe it was. But it was when you went underground and you first went into the tower for the first time, and you crawl to the top of it, and you go to shut it down, and then the professor's there, and he calls his little Franken monster after you, and you get in a fight, and then you end up fighting Dr. Luge as a robot himself, kind of a cyborg. So that's kind of a reference to that game. There's actually quite a few of those references in this game if you've been picking up on them. I call them out where I see them, but I'm sure I've missed quite a few. I think that's kind of what they're trying to do here with this game is you know, throw back to the old Final Fantasies and play the nostalgia card for all the somewhat older gamers out there like myself. Aging, I guess you should say, aging gamers. But I guess the younger guys, I shouldn't say guys, the younger players. I've met plenty of girls that play Final Fantasy as well. The younger ones, they probably haven't played those Final Fantasies. I ran into a guy that was late teens now, and had played Final Fantasy X as his first Final Fantasy. And I was like, hey, good for you. That was one of my favorites, and I know a lot of people really loathe that one. But I really liked that one. I thought it was really good, had a really good plot. But he liked 10, and he said he went back and tried to play 7. And he said from what he played, because everyone told him to go play 7, which is not something I recommend. I think if you play 10, you shouldn't go back to 7 right away. I think you should try to appreciate 7 as a nostalgic game, because really 7 hasn't held up as well as some of the other games have. I think 6 and 4 have held up really well, probably because they're 2-dimensional sprite-based games. Final Fantasy VII, because they used their pre-rendered backgrounds, and it was the first game of 3D, there was just really some bad polygons on that game, and I think that it needs a graphics overhaul pretty bad. The materia system was pretty badass, and that's held up pretty good, and the story's actually pretty good as well. The translation wasn't too bad in that game. So on those fronts, you're okay, but the eye candy is just not candy these days. It really aged very poorly as far as aesthetics. But anyways, he went and tried 7, and he thought the 7 was not too bad, which I'm glad that he thought that. But I find that a lot of these younger gamers that have gotten into Final Fantasy somewhere in the middle, they don't go back all the way and play the first couple, which I really wouldn't recommend anybody go back and play 1. I don't ever recommend anyone play 1 on a NES unless you started there, or unless you're from that era. And the reason being because 1 is the worst one to hold up. There's so many little problems with it. Like, for instance, if you try to attack an enemy and then it gets killed before your turn comes up, the attack comes up as ineffective rather than just being targeting the next enemy. That's unfortunate. I mean, to me, that's kind of a deal breaker. That's not a very good mechanic to have in the game. If you do recommend someone to go play 1, I think they should go play either the Game Boy Advance version, which is, I think, was it called Dawn of Souls or something like that. They had a Game Boy Advance version that was redone. That was actually pretty decent. They put the same version, I believe, on PlayStation, or a very similar version, and I think that's also the version that's on Android and iOS right now. It's just been a little bit, each one of those is a little bit altered from each other. It might be the PSP version though, I'm not sure. I know the PSP version's a little bit different. I can't remember which one went where, because all these different versions that I'm talking about, they're all very similar. They kind of look more like 16-bit graphics, and the gameplay's been polished up. In the original, they had a count of how many magic spells you could do, so for level 1 magic, you could only cast it 8 times, and then you'd have to go to the inn, and level 2. They abandoned that for an MP system, which is vastly superior. But yeah, so any of those redone versions, I'd recommend those. If someone wants to go back and play Final Fantasy 1, play those ones, because if you play the NES one, you're just going to get frustrated. I can't say the same thing about 2 and 3, because 2 and 3, I never played those on the NES versions of those, because they were only in Japanese, and the fan translations that you can get on emulators, which you can get those, you can get English dubbed ROMs for those games. I just haven't gone after them. I haven't really cared to, because I have newer versions of them, and I figured that's probably not something that I need to go back and revisit, especially with the feelings that I have about 1. So going through this part right here, it's kind of interesting. You're kind of chasing this black mage or whatever this caster is. They keep disappearing on you as you're going down these ladders. A good trick is, as you're going down, you've probably seen me do this already several times, whatever ladder the mage is going down, go down the opposite ladder, because the opposite ladder is the way to go towards treasure, and the ladder that they went down, there's the caster there. The ladder they went down, that's the ladder that goes farther in the story. I think there's a piece here where I actually double back. Yeah, I was looking for a way through there and I didn't see it. Maybe there was and I missed it. I'm not 100% sure that I got all the treasure boxes out of this particular cave. I don't even know if I can call it a cave anymore. It's a big monstrosity in the middle of a cave. So at this point in time, these characters should be etching up towards that level 20 with their first job, depending on how you played the jobs. Yeah, there was a way through that. Do I go back? Maybe I go back, maybe I don't. Oh, I think I can see it from here. We'll see if I double back for it. At this point too, like I've been playing the game not too much recently. I'm not much farther in the game than this. I really want to finish this walkthrough though. I've just been focusing on lots of other things in life. Not only that, but with the channel and everything, it seems like recently there hasn't been a lot of new games come out that are big deals. House of the Dead came out and that was kind of a big deal. That was a pretty decent game too. I just put a review for that one up a couple days ago. And there's a couple little smaller games that lesser known games that I'm reviewing right now, hoping to get those reviews out in the next couple days. And aside from that, no real big name games have come out. Gameville put out a couple games. One of them, and sometimes Gameville games, like I'm hit and miss on how I feel about those games. But in addition to that, some of their games just have really bad compatibility rates, and one of them was that situation where I've got several devices and I go to install the game and there just isn't any devices that... Come on, Chris, go up and around. There you go. But anyways, I just don't have any devices that will play the game. The one device that I had, they had 2 releases just recently. One of the releases I went to go play. The one device that I had that it said it was compatible for crashed over and over and over again. So I just didn't say anything, because it's better that way, I think, for the channel, rather than review a game and go, see, look, it crashes. I think that's just very worthless to everybody. I mean, all I'm doing at that point is taking jabs at Gameville, and that doesn't need to be done. That's a low blow. So a lot of times if games have performance issues or games have compatibility issues, I'll just skip them, because it doesn't make sense to show them off. It's the same thing with you know, minor games that are just not any good. I don't do negative reviews on games that are lesser known games, because it's just a waste of everybody's time. And I don't care if it's a game that, you know, it's getting a lot of search traffic and maybe I'd get a bunch of hits for it. That's just, it's a waste of time. We're not doing anybody any favors by negatively reviewing a game that is of low quality to start with and no one's really heard of. There's actually a number of channels now on YouTube that are starting up just recently, probably within the last, I don't know, 6 months or so, that have been making that their kind of business angle for YouTube, is to just shotgun gameplay. There's no commentaries, there's hardly any production, and all they do is they jam out as many games as they can, and they do about 2 minutes of gameplay in hopes that they'll be the first one to cover that game so that they'll get the hits. And as their views grow, then their ranks do on YouTube as well. And it's actually kind of I think it's a poor way to go about things, because they're not adding a lot of value for the user base, but they're not really doing anything. It's just gameplay, and I guess for some people that might make sense. So this is the first boss of this dungeon, and this is about where this piece ends. I think I walk a little bit farther into the next part before I come to a save spot. But this is, for all intents and purposes, this is a boss. This is going to be a decently hard fight. Which is kind of funny, because when we left this character, I do believe this is the one that was around Barbara. And so he has super mega dragoon abilities. There you go, he's got jump. And the last time we fought him, he was like mega strong. And now he showed up and he's like a total wiener. I don't get it. That's something they do a lot in these RPGs, is they'll have some character get like super overpowered and just crush you. And then once your characters level up, you go to fight him again, and they're just really get pushovers. And it's not that you've leveled up that much, it's that for some reason they've now become much weaker. Your defense is not going to get so much better that you've turned, you know, 9,999 damage into, you know, hits of 200. But I guess that's kind of like judging the physics of Roadrunner cartoons. It's a cartoon. I should just go with it, right? This is a game. Let's just go with it. So here, the mitigation strategy here is relatively simple. You just need to heal yourself enough. Healing is going to be an issue here, obviously. You can see my white mage almost already gone down. I found that in this game, at least as far as I am in the game so far, that it actually doesn't have that many good bosses in it. And when I say good bosses, that means bosses that require a lot of strategy. I find that in a large number of the bosses in this game, I just set up a fight where I have a healer or two, and then I have a couple melee characters and maybe somebody else doing damage somehow. And just auto battle, and it finishes the battle for me. And that's kind of sad, because they're a boss. They're supposed to make you have to think a little bit, and I find that I'm not thinking as much as I would like to. Not a lot of strategy goes into this game. Especially not as much as occurred in the old Super NES Final Fantasies. And that's essentially what this is trying to emulate, is, you know, those Final Fantasies, bring them back to life. And I find that this one's a lot more random battle heavy, which is kind of sad, because in those games you didn't get nearly as many random battles, and there was still a lot of game to be played. And I think a lot of it, that's what's missing between those games and this game, is the storyline. So all that stuff that we did, getting to this point, fighting that boss, going through all that kind of machinery construction area, was just to turn on the elevator. If you saw at the very beginning of the dungeon, we walked in, the elevator was down, and we went around. here we are again with the elevator, and we are just simply going to walk out of the cave and save the game, come back in, and then go up to the next floor. So this whole video was just turn on the elevator. Very funny. Funny that that's the mechanic on the game. But oh well. Anyways, so I will leave you all with this piece. I'll see you again on the next piece, part 42, where we finish this dungeon and then head back over to Noct and his team. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, this has been Pixel Freak.